is inherently stronger than any of those approaches by themselves. So what I see for the future of my field is a decrease in the importance of classifying things by frequency of types, and instead relying on a much richer, more robust set of data than we've had in the past that can be used to develop sophisticated and complex simulations of demographic processes, so we can begin to test alternative hypotheses about different population sizes and migration patterns, movements, all kinds of things. And this is just my inherent optimism as a geneticist, I guess. Up to this point, I think in anthropological genetics, at least for these kinds of questions, genetics has operated as a mechanism to test hypotheses that are ultimately generated by other scholars, primarily archaeologists, and that's just fine. I think in the future, as our data become much more robust and richer, genetics is likely to become more of a generator of hypotheses rather than just a mechanism and a method for testing other hypotheses. And with that, I'll close, and thank you very much for having me here. I appreciate it. Yes?
Years ago, I saw a hypothesis looking at the outline of Brazil and Africa, that those two were connected.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch it.
Africa and
He's talking about Pangea.
Oh, we don't go back nearly that far.
Oh,
We don't go back nearly that far. Pangea and other larger land masses due to tectonic plate action, much further back in time.
okay, I heard
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Beringia is different than Pangea.
Yeah.
Yes.
What kind of variations occur in modern indigenous people, tribe to tribe? Are they, like, for example, are the Alaska Natives less variant than for example, the Plains Natives?
Yeah, the answer is twofold. It's fairly straightforward. Yes, there's less variation in modern Inuit people in the North American Arctic than in other Native American populations further south. And it's easy to distinguish them genetically. But the reason is the northern peoples, Inuit peoples of North America, represent a much later migration from across the Bering Strait, only 5,000 to 6,000 years ago. It's a completely different and 10,000 years later at least than the earlier movement of people that gave rise to the indigenous Americans and the rest of the continent.
What do those two share genetically?
They share some of the same maternal lineages, but they differ in some of the diagnostic mutations that are associated with them, and they have very different archaeological contexts, and basically all across the north, there are 16 founding maternal lineages in American Indian populations in North and South America. 16 founding maternal lineages.
Wow.
There are about 3 in the Arctic. And so it's a very different scenario. Now, most of my work actually focuses on those late Arctic transitions, but some of it, this earlier stuff. Yes?
You showed that map of the two branches, the coastal one and the interior one. Is there any correlation to the DNA of modern Native Americans from those areas?
Yeah, a little bit. Not a lot just yet. There's one mitochondrial lineage, one maternal lineage, that is primarily, but not exclusively, but primarily distributed in modern populations along the Pacific coast. There are few examples of it, especially in a couple of ancient samples inland, but at least one of those is just a little ways inland along a river. So it could easily have been a coastal person. But yeah, so there is some geographic structure, we call it,
What's the basic
to the-
question you're chasing?
Pardon?
What is the basic question you are chasing?
The basic question I'm chasing, there are two that I'm interested in primarily. One is, how did the distinctive Native American genome arise and how did it disperse in the Americas? For example, many models assume that there was a single pulse of people that came in a single migration and then rapidly grew in size and dispersed very rapidly over long distances. I think that's implausible given the genetic data. I want to know if there were multiple times and points of entry so that it's a more complex one that can help us account better for the distribution of the genetic variation we see. How does the geographic structure in mitochondrial lineages in particular get explained given alternative demographic scenarios? I told you earlier that the haplogroup B is very high frequency in the US Southwest. It's essentially absent on the Columbia Plateau and the Northwest coast. It's a very high frequency in highland Peru, in the Andes. It's almost absent in lowland South America. How do these geographic structures become established? What does that tell us about timing of migrations? How long it took for these to develop? All those kinds of things, so we get a better sense of how people move around the landscape, especially into new environments. I find that interesting, and one of the reasons I work so much on the later migrations and colonizations in the Arctic is A, I like going to the Arctic, it's kind of a cool place, and so I like my field work there, and two, if we can't sort it out for something that occurred so recently in the past, why do we have any confidence we can do it so much earlier in time? All right, so that's just Felix.
First of all, I'm impressed how far we have come since I did blood typing in Montana in the late 1950s.
It's been, yeah, we've come a long way.
Yeah, but the second question really is, where do you see our discipline going with this? Because right now, much talk is about diversity and what does anthropology do in the 21st century?
I know I could ride Felix for the simple questions. I don't know exactly. I don't read the future very well. One of the things I do think is that I think some portions of the discipline, but probably not all, will become more focused on some quantitative issues, and particularly what I think of as sort of IT issues, modeling, so that we can test hypotheses about things that we never could before, just because databases, I don't know that the testing of hypotheses directly with the data we collect will always be possible, but they'll be so informative for developing models about how we think about what humans do and how they adapt to different situations and contexts. And that information has to come from somebody other than geneticists. It comes from much of the rest of the discipline of anthropology, in my view, and probably lots of other disciplines that I'm not so aware of. My own view is I think we're going to become more integrative. I hope that's the case anyway.
Do you think the field will stay unified, or are we going to follow other disciplines?
I don't think we're going, I don't see the kind of continued separation within our discipline that we've seen in the past. That's what I mean by more integrated. I think we're going to see a lot more collaboration between people in different sub-areas of anthropology, making significant contributions to each other's views, which is one of the reasons I think that simulation and modeling can be so important, not only to addressing the questions that me and many others are interested in, but it also is a way to bring us together as a discipline and work on common issues again. That's my view, or my hope, I should say. Yes?
I just saw a video of all of the satellites that stay in a particular position around the Earth, and as the earth turns, they follow the same position,
Mhm.
so they can see the change of each location. And they talk about the impact that humans have on their environment, and that way we can project the future with their growth and their movement and their population growth. And like you say, the integrative
Mhm.
past and the projective future, I think will have a great integrative impact on each other.
I hope so. I think that's going to be true. I think we will have a much stronger science if we do that kind of integration, and our inferences will be stronger. I didn't mention it when I talked about paleoecology, but we were chatting about this at lunch. The entire formation of the ice sheets and the presence of Beringian land bridge is the result of climate change in the past. We're seeing rapid climate change again, and it's having dramatic impact on populations living in lots of places, including South Pacific, but certainly in coastal regions of the Arctic. And one of my most recent projects, it was a 6 or 7 year project, was done solely because of coastal erosion and destroying of ancient villages on the coast. And the local community was concerned that that should not happen, that those early prehistoric burials should not be lost to the Arctic Ocean, and asked that they be recovered and studied before being reinterred. So there are all kinds of connections between studying the past and what's happening now and in the future. Yeah.
Are those ancient sites in South America that are 13,000, 14,000 years old, does that support this kind of coastal migration thing, which might be faster?
In my view, it does, for ecological reasons
But
as
it
well
seems
as
kind of
timing.
counterintuitive that would be so old, and Alaska would be like, the native Alaskans would be relatively half that age.
Yeah, but don't forget the people living in Alaska during the same time frame were probably living in these refugia in the southern part of the landmass, which is now under the Bering Sea. So we don't recover them. I argue about one of one of my archaeological colleagues all the time. He's convinced that they've surveyed all of Alaska and they're not missing 10,000 years of prehistory. And I keep saying, well, you might, because you haven't surveyed the bottom of the Bering Sea,
Yeah.
which is where we think they were living, given the rest of the data. And so it's those kinds of issues that we still have to
Boy,
work
there's a
through.
data gathering challenge.
Yeah.
Submarine archaeology.
People are actually starting to do that up there.
Submarine?
Yes.
It's been more than 70 years ago that I had my first school lessons in history, and I can remember learning about Eskimos, and I really liked Eskimos.
Yeah, me too.
It's only 7-8 weeks ago now. I had my first tour, finally, of the 50th state of my experience, and it was just a quick one from Fairbanks to Seward and back up to Anchorage. But we had a tour director that grew up in Anchorage, really nice, very knowledgeable lady, and she said that she kind of told us in a warning manner that the term Eskimo to the Alaska natives now is considered, and she said it this way, kind of the way the N-word is used for American native African Americans now.
Oh, my goodness.
Speak to that point.
That's a stronger position than I have experienced in most places. When I first started working in Alaska, especially North Alaska, about almost 10 years ago now, I asked friends, indigenous people that I met and became friends with.
Mhm.
I said, there are lots of terms for how to refer to people in this region. And I was concerned about whether or not the Canadian and Greenlandic common term Inuit was appropriate to
Yeah.
use in Alaska.
Yeah.
And I was told, no, they don't like Inuit, we're Eskimos, and we're perfectly happy to be Eskimos.
I heard that too.
In the last couple of years, I have heard people say, well, yeah, we're not as fond of it as we used to be. And some are adopting the term Inuit, but many still don't like it. Most that I know in the North and now the West tend to refer to collectively groups by a linguistic term, which is Inupiat. They speak Inupiat languages,
too.
and so they tend to refer, the folks that I know, and this is not uniform, tend to refer to northern peoples not as much by the term Eskimo as used to be the case, but Inupiat. But at least where I work, they still don't like the Canadian and Greenland
Alaska, they're
Inuit.
called Alaska Natives.
Oh yeah, everybody's happy with Alaska Native,
Heard that.
but that includes American Indians, and most Inupiat definitely do not want to be confused with American Indians.
Huh.
They
They
have
don't
a
want
very
to be
distinctive
confused-
history,
don't want to be confused
they're
by it
aware of
Because
that.
they're not related?
Pardon?
Because they're not related?
They have different origins, culturally especially.
Oh, culturally,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, and different origins. Yes?
Well, I just wanted to take a picture of that quote that you had up on the screen. I was wondering if you could make it go backwards.
Sure. Which one? This one?
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
I've got to share, when I learned about this sensitivity possibility about Eskimos, in my own family, especially amongst the grandchildren, when something is, becomes broken, it's a kind of a joke that, well, go get the Eskimo adhesive and we'll fix it,
Eskimo.
meaning the igloo.
I'm going to try that next time I'm in Western Alaska. We'll see how that goes down. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it being here. Thanks for your interest.